Hi, I'm Hal Roberts. This is Bridge City News. Here's some of the top stories we've been following. The Canadian Taxpayers Federation has spoken out against Conservative leader Erin O'Toole's proposed carbon tax. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says another apology is forthcoming, and this one is for Italian Canadians. We will explain why. And a petition against mandatory face covering in Taber has hit a major roadblock. We have the details.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Hal Roberts.
Thanks so much for joining us. The Taxpayers Federation of Canada is slamming Conservative leader Erin O'Toole for announcing his own carbon tax. Alberta Director of the CTF, Franco Terrazzano, says O'Toole is breaking his promise to Canadians, reflecting back on the pledge O'Toole made, which says if elected Prime Minister, he would immediately repeal the Trudeau carbon tax and reject any future national carbon tax or cap-and-trade scheme. Terrazzano says O'Toole needs to stick up for struggling taxpayers and fight the carbon tax and not backtrack on promises.
Our blood is boiling. It's outrageous that Mr. O'Toole seems to be flip-flopping, seems to be getting ready to hammer Canadians with a carbon tax of his own. And now a key thing that we all need to remember here is that when Mr. O'Toole was running for leadership of the Conservative Party, he signed a pledge with the Canadian Taxpayers Federation saying that he would scrap the carbon tax and that he would not bring in his own carbon tax. So if he moves forward with these proposals today, it would be a clear break of promise from Mr. O'Toole.
Farmers are facing a number of challenges today, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. That's according to Lynn Jacobson, president of the Alberta Federation of Agriculture. Another issue is coal mining in the eastern slopes of the Canadian Rockies. Jacobson owns a mostly irrigated farm near Enchant, Alberta, and he says that farmers are worried about the impact on water and air quality on crops if coal mining should continue to move forward in our province.
I guess our feeling as an organization is, as we go forward, if we start tampering with that water supply and we do coal mining, it's not only is it going to take a water supply away from us in the allocation, because they do need water to process the coal and that. And the other part of that mining, though, is a contaminant, and basically celium is one of the large contaminants that comes out of that, and how that flows down, and that's not very good. So we don't want to really endanger what we have as an industry.
Jacobson says that irrigation farms need to be protected since they're one of the largest crop production areas in all of Canada. The municipal election is coming up this October. Now, we've already seen a number of candidates in Lethbridge come forward. Marissa Black is one of them. Black has a background in biology and agricultural research. She says she's passionate about bringing marginalized voices to the table along with environmental issues. She also says it's a goal of hers to retain academics from Lethbridge College and the University of Lethbridge in order to bring even more businesses to our community.
We're going to have obviously more projects going on. We have more people having that voice for the scientific community, or just people who are educated. People who are educated tend to know what the issues are, and also they're going to bring more entrepreneurial spirit. That's one thing that I think is really important, is trying to incentivize especially entrepreneurs to stay in Lethbridge, because those are the kinds of people who are going to be creating jobs for those of us who live here, or those of us who are going to live here, young people who are entering the workforce. So it's just important for that reason.
The municipal election will take place on October the 18th. A petition written by residents of Taber hit a roadblock at Town Council. There were 528 signatures collected to try and rescind the Taber mask bylaw. Now, the reason the petition was not considered is because it did not meet the time requirements of 60 days after the mask bylaw was passed. This means the petition would have had to have been sent in by the end of February to be able to be considered. 10% of the population of Taber also would have had to sign the petition, and that they fell well short of that mark. Taber Mayor Andrew Prokop says that even if Council were to accept the petition and rescind the bylaw, there's still a provincial face covering mandate in effect.
The province's required masking bylaw supersedes any local municipal bylaw, regardless. So it doesn't really matter if you didn't have one. You were still bound by the Alberta Health Services bylaw that's required to wear the mask in the designated places, and that hasn't hasn't changed since that's come into effect here the last couple of months or so.
Mayor Prokop says that if any residents have questions regarding the mask petition rescindment, they can phone the Town of Taber office. Lethbridge police have charged 35-year-old Wesley Johnson with numerous drug-related offences. Now, during a traffic stop on Wednesday, officers noticed activities consistent with drug trafficking and noticed that Johnson was also in possession of a loaded firearm. BCN's Ainsley O'Reilly is at the Lethbridge Police Station and has more.
Well, Hal, Johnson is facing a total of 28 charges, including possession of a prohibited weapon, possession with the intent of trafficking, and possession of the proceeds of crime. Officers also uncovered methamphetamine, cocaine, and fentanyl worth about $1,600, as well as drug paraphernalia consistent with drug trafficking. Hal?
Johnson is currently in custody awaiting a bail hearing. Lethbridge College is handing out its 20th honorary degree during this spring's convocation ceremonies. The lucky recipient will be the Honorable Murray Sinclair. Sinclair, who's a member of the Peguis First Nation of Manitoba, was Manitoba's first and Canada's second Indigenous judge. Sinclair will receive a Bachelor of Applied Arts and Justice Studies. The college says due to the pandemic, Sinclair will not travel to Lethbridge, but instead will be presented with the honorary degree in Winnipeg from 2006 Lethbridge College grad Dr. Carla Guyan. Bike enthusiasts are being encouraged to don their helmets and jump on their bicycles for a good cause. The Great Canadian Cycle Challenge Canada raises money for programming and cancer research for sick kids who are battling the disease. Anyone in Canada can join in, including anyone here in Lethbridge.
You're signing up for a month-long challenge, but you can set your own distance goal and your own fundraising goal. So there's no minimums there. So whether you want to ride 5 kilometers and raise $5, or whether you want to ride 1,000 kilometers and raise $1,000, it's totally up to you. The event takes place through the month of August, but you can kind of start your training anytime. We have quite a big community of people who kind of do this, I wouldn't say year round, but almost. You know, as of today, we've got almost 1,800 people signed up across Canada, and people are riding already. But basically the tracking all starts April or August 1st and runs for the whole month of August. And so you can track your rides. It gets posted onto your personal fundraising page. You can share your story on social, through emails, however you want to do it.
Last year, the event had 52,000 people participate, raising just shy of $9.5 million for cancer research. If you're looking at getting a COVID-19 vaccine, it is readily available. That's according to our province's Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Dina Henshaw. She says right now it's available for Albertans aged 55 to 64.
You can book an appointment at participating pharmacies across the province or online with Alberta Health Services. I am also pleased to announce that walk-in vaccinations are available at 26 participating pharmacies in Calgary and Edmonton. AHS will also open 2 walk-in AstraZeneca vaccine clinics on Saturday in Calgary and Edmonton. While these walk-in locations are limited to Calgary and Edmonton, you don't need to live there to get your dose.
Many Canadians are having a difficult time with the government lockdowns and restrictions. So many businesses have also closed their doors across the country since the start of the pandemic. Now, for our poll question this week, we're asking, do you agree with the Alberta government's decision to go back to step 1 of restrictions? Log on to our website, bridgecitynews.ca, and let us know your thoughts. We'll have the results of the poll on Friday evening's newscast. As the weather warms up, more and more Albertans are thinking about heading out and camping. You may have to bring a few extra dollars with you if you're heading out to the backcountry. Our legislative reporter, Tyler Dawson, says the province is bringing in a new fee for those who enjoy backcountry camping.
It'll be $20 per adult for a 3-day pass, and then $30 per adult for an annual pass. So the best bang for your buck if you're going more than once, of course, is to get that annual pass. So that's the system they've put in place, or it will come into effect, I should say. What that money is going to be used for is infrastructure upgrades, maintenance, cleanup, conservation, all that kind of stuff that is of concern to the people that really enjoy these areas.
Mr. Dawson will also talk about a funny moment at the legislature recently involving a UCP MLA who wrote a poem about cancel culture. That interview is coming up after business news. Students in grades 7 through 12 in Calgary schools are moving to at-home learning beginning on Monday. Education Minister Adriana LaGrange says the change is due to an increase in COVID-19 cases and will last for 2 weeks. She says the government made the decision at the urging of the public and Catholic school boards in the city. Opposition NDP members have criticized the UCP, saying the government has underplayed the severity of the virus's impact on schools, causing stress for 80,000 students and their families in Calgary. Work on a new arena for the Calgary Flames has been put on ice. The issue is money and other budgetary issues. Now, the Calgary Municipal Land Corporation says there's a difference between the current $550 million budget estimate and the program requirements for the venue. The City and Calgary Sports and Entertainment, which owns the Flames, agreed in 2019 to split the cost of a new building on a parcel of land located north of the Saddle Dome. An Alberta judge has ordered the trial of a 54-year-old man charged in the death of a family doctor in Red Deer to proceed as scheduled in late November. Justice Paul Belzil says Dang Mabior is deemed fit to stand trial on a charge of first-degree murder in the death of Dr. Walter Reynolds. The judge made no mention of a second assessment that was supposed to be done while Mabior was being held at a forensic psychiatric center in Calgary. Mabior has been transferred to the Calgary Remand Center and continues to insist on representing himself at the trial. BC's health officials marked the 5th anniversary of the declaration of a public health emergency in response to soaring deaths due to drug overdoses. They're calling for greater compassion, healthcare support, and expanded access to a safe supply of prescription alternatives.
Those dying are not other people. They are our friends, our neighbors, our sons and daughters, our siblings and our parents. They are not perfect people. We are not perfect people. And we won't come up with a perfect solution to the long-standing challenges of substance use in the province. But we cannot continue with the current state. We must resolve to do much better.
Union officials say the ongoing COVID-19 outbreak at the Regina Correctional Centre has doubled in size since Tuesday. A spokesperson with the Saskatchewan Government and General Employees Union says 115 inmates and 20 staff have tested positive for the virus. The union has continuously pushed the province to make corrections officers a priority target for the vaccine. Health Minister Paul Merriman says that's not being considered and that jails are an environment where people can be kept safe. Our country's chief public health officer says close to 9 million doses of COVID-19 vaccine have now been administered. Dr. Howard New says 84% of those over the age of 80 have had a first dose.
As vaccination programs continue to roll out across the country, more and more scientific information about COVID-19 vaccines is becoming available. Health Canada, the Public Health Agency of Canada, and the many partners we are working with to end this pandemic continue to pay close attention to the unfolding situation. As of April 9th, there have been 3,444 reports of adverse events following vaccination to date. These include any mild medical event that occurs following vaccination, such as soreness at the site of injection or a slight fever, but isn't necessarily related to the vaccine. 464 of these reports, about 1 in 16,000 doses administered, were considered serious, such as a severe allergic reaction. All serious events undergo a detailed investigation. As you know, earlier this week, Quebec health officials announced the first reported case in Canada of a person who experienced an adverse event involving blood clots with low platelets after receiving the AstraZeneca vaccine, following the administration of more than 709,000 doses of this vaccine across the country.
Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he will issue a formal apology next month for the internment of Italian Canadians during the Second World War.
During the Second World War, hundreds of Italian Canadians were interned for the simple reason that they were of Italian heritage. Parents were taken away from their homes, leaving children without their father in many cases, and families without a paycheck to put food on their table. Lives and careers, businesses and reputations were interrupted and ruined. And yet, no one was held responsible. Italian Canadians have lived with these memories for many years, and they deserve closure. Can the Prime Minister provide an update on a formal apology on behalf of the Government of Canada?
Canadians of Italian heritage, whose immigrant stories are so familiar, have earned the respect of a grateful nation. But Canadians of Italian heritage deal with ongoing discrimination related to mistakes made by our governments of the past that continue to affect them to this day. I'm proud to stand up and say that our government will right these wrongs with a formal apology in the month of May 2021.
A group of volunteers has begun fundraising efforts for a permanent memorial for the 22 people who were killed in a mass shooting in Nova Scotia a year ago. Finding a suitable site may take some time as people in Portapique are not eager to have a memorial too near the scene of the tragedy.
A memorial is very important so this can be remembered. So we can have a place where people and family can go, spend time, reflect, remember the loved ones, it's a very important aspect of it. It would be a nice, quiet, secluded place, very clean and well kept, some gardens, nicely landscaped, so you can, I personally think, little places, so if there's multiple people there, that you can have your own little corner where you can be by yourself and do what you need to do. Just a nice, respectful place.
Middle East foreign policy experts say U.S. President Joe Biden's plan to withdraw remaining U.S. troops from the war in Afghanistan is receiving mixed reviews. Biden plans the military pull-out September 11th, which will be the 20th anniversary of the September 11th terrorist attacks.
What really stands out with the Biden administration's plan is the fact that this is not a conditions-based withdrawal. He's saying troops will draw down to zero by September 11th, and it could be significantly before that. And this actually goes even beyond what President Trump agreed on in the deal with the Taliban in Doha last year, which was a conditions-based withdrawal.
I've concluded that it's time to end America's longest war. It's time for American troops to come home.
I suspect Biden's speech will be received with a warm welcome from Democrats and Republicans, from Americans across the aisle, because they're sort of looking at this conflict and wondering why we're still there. And part of that is related to the lack of clear results. We've spent a lot of time and money there. Many people lost their lives. It doesn't fit within our national narrative right now in the way that it did post 9/11.
The Taliban, which has been a stubborn insurgency throughout, is in a far better position now than it was years ago. But if we don't guarantee a peace deal between the Taliban and the Kabul government or make progress towards it, then those gains that we made, the democratic government, the gains for women and children, those all go away as well.
It was on this day that the Titanic sinks off the coast of Newfoundland. Jackie Robinson becomes the first African-American player in Major League Baseball, and the U.S. launches an air raid against Libya. This is Today in History for April the 15th.
April 15th, 1912. Just hours after hitting an iceberg, the Titanic sinks off the coast of Newfoundland. About 1,500 people on board the British luxury liner perish in the waters of the icy North Atlantic. 1865, President Abraham Lincoln dies in Washington, hours after John Wilkes Booth shoots and mortally wounds him at Ford's Theater. Vice President Andrew Johnson succeeds Lincoln in the White House. 1947.
Did you see Jackie Robinson hit that ball? It went zooming across the left field wall. Yeah, boy.
Jackie Robinson becomes the first African-American player in Major League Baseball. His debut with the Brooklyn Dodgers shatters baseball's decades-old racial barrier. 1986. The United States launches an air raid against Libya in response to the bombing of a disco in what's then West Berlin, Germany. Libya says 37 people, mostly civilians, are killed in the raid. 1998. Pol Pot, leader of Cambodia's Khmer Rouge, dies of natural causes along the border with Thailand at age 73. He evades prosecution for the deaths of 2 million Cambodians under his brutal regime during the 1970s. And 2001. In New York, punk rocker Joey Ramone, lead singer of the Ramones, dies of lymphoma at age 49. Today in history, April 15th. Sandy Kozel, The Associated Press.
I used to have hair like that so long ago. It felt a lot more like spring today in southwestern Alberta, and this weekend maybe even warmer. Full weather details are on deck. It was another beautiful day in Lethbridge as we got up to double-digit temperatures once again, and even warmer temperatures are on the horizon. Jeanette Rocher is here now with a complete look at the weather forecast. Jeanette, the warmer weather may finally mean it's time to fire up that barbecue?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right, Hal, because look at these temperatures coming up with lots of sunshine over the weekend. 15 tomorrow, 22 on a Saturday with sunny skies. Not too much wind in this time frame either. 15 kilometer per hour winds tomorrow. Not so bad on Saturday either. Look what happens on Sunday though. 70% chance of showers. I mean, you know what they say, April showers, right? They bring May flowers. High of only 6 degrees on Sunday. So if you are going to fire up that barbecue, do it on Saturday. Don't wait till Sunday. You might be sorry. 11 degrees is the high for Monday with a mix of sun and cloud into Tuesday. 15 and a high on a Wednesday. So still doing a little bit of that roller coaster effect, going way high with the high of 22 on Saturday and diving down to 6 degrees on Sunday. And then we go back up again. So on average, staying above this average range here, with the average high for this time of year being 13 degrees, average low -1. 26 was our high temperature back in 1984. Wouldn't that have been nice? And back in 1953, we had our chilliest day, which was -15. Sun rose this morning at 6:39 a.m. and our sunset this evening will be at 8:24 p.m. So let's take a look at what's happening tomorrow across the country over on the West Coast. Pretty beautiful, I would say. 22 degrees the high in Victoria tomorrow. A little bit cooler by the water. 17 the high in Vancouver. Going a little bit inland, they're going to be looking more like a high of 24 inland from Vancouver. 18 degrees the high in Edmonton, and Calgary high of 15 degrees. So beautiful day across Alberta tomorrow. In Saskatchewan, this is where we get that strange overnight into the mornings wind chill, where it's still feeling those minus temperatures, but then they climb throughout the day. Sunshine and 12 degrees in Saskatoon, 8 in Regina, high of 6 degrees tomorrow in Winnipeg with a mix of sun and cloud. This is where we get the precipitation. We have a 40% chance of showers tomorrow in Toronto with a 40K wind, high of 6 degrees, high of 8 in Ottawa, periods of rain. Periods of rain also in Montreal tomorrow with a high of 8 degrees as well. A little bit the same looking at the east coast here. Fredericton though, mainly cloudy, got some fog patches in the morning, 10 degrees the high. Halifax, we're seeing some high winds of 40 to 60 kilometers per hour. Chance of showers as well, high of 5 degrees. 7 the high in Charlottetown with beautiful sunny skies though. And then up here in St. John's, Newfoundland, we have a chance of flurries and high winds up to 60 km per hour with a high of 1 degree. So there you go. It's all over the place, but that is your forecast.
Canadian manufacturing sales fell 1.6% to $55.4 billion in February. That was mainly due to a big drop in the transportation sector. Stats Canada says motor vehicle sales declined 14.5% as production was impacted by a shortage of microchips. A senior economist at Capital Economics says the global semiconductor shortage carried over into this month. But Stephen Brown says other surveys suggest activity elsewhere in the manufacturing sector has continued to recover. The Canadian Real Estate Association says home sales hit a record high last month as they jumped 76.2% from a year earlier. CREA says the average price of homes sold was up 31.6% from the same month last year at almost $717,000. The association says, however, that supply slowly returned to the overheated market last month. That eased the national sales to new listings ratio back to 80.5% compared with a peak of 90.9% in January. A major Canadian real estate board is dropping the use of the term master bedroom from its listings. The Toronto Real Estate Board says it will instead use the term primary bedroom when referring to the main bedroom. The board says master is often seen as a reference to slavery, sexism, and racism. The Canadian Real Estate Association switched to using the word primary on Realtor.ca last October. A feasibility study on small nuclear reactors was released and gives a potential timeline for the development and deployment in Canada. The study, prepared by power companies in Saskatchewan, Ontario, and New Brunswick, concludes that the reactors can meet regional energy needs while reducing greenhouse gas emissions. It says Canada's first grid-scale SMR project is expected to be in place at the Darlington nuclear site by 2028, followed up by 4 smaller units in Saskatchewan. The study was released as Alberta officially signed paperwork with other provinces, pledging collaboration in developing the technology. Now, here's a look at today's markets. The TSX was up 150 points on the day to finish at 19,322. The Dow was up 305 points to 34,036. The S&P 500 was up 45 points to 4170, and the Nasdaq was up 180 points on the day to 14,039. West Texas Intermediate Oil was up 20 cents to 63.35 US per barrel. Natural gas was up 4 cents to 2.66 US. Gold was up a cent to 17.6396 US an ounce, and silver was up 43 cents to 25.85 US an ounce. Wheat is at $317 per metric ton, barley's at $328, canola's at $824, and corn is at $359 per metric ton. Live cattle were down 50 cents to $121.60, feeder cattle were down $1.10 to $140.05, and lean hogs were down 20 cents to $103.40. The Canadian dollar was up slightly over the past 24 hours to 79.72 US. Recapping one of our top stories this hour, students in grades 7 through 12 in Calgary schools are moving to at-home learning beginning on Monday. Education Minister Adriana LaGrange says the change is due to an increase in COVID-19 cases and will last for 2 weeks. She says the government made the decision at the urging of the public and Catholic school boards in the city. There was a small outbreak of COVID-19 at Premier Kenney's office in Edmonton. Our legislative reporter Tyler Dawson will have details for us in just a moment. Certain UCP MLAs who disagree with the province's restrictions have spoken out. 17 of them signed that open letter to Albertans saying how the lockdowns are causing more harm than good. Now, to discuss this in more detail is our legislative reporter and the Alberta correspondent with the National Post, Tyler Dawson, joining me once again from Edmonton. Tyler, does it not appear that maybe the United Conservative Party is not so united anymore?
That certainly seems to be the case. You know, there has been a little bit of internal dissent here and there over some things. There's been a handful of MLAs who've had some issues with the COVID restrictions, Drew Barnes being sort of the big one down your way. But yeah, this was a big deal. 17 out of 25 small town or rural UCP MLAs and 17 out of 63 UCP MLAs. So when you put those numbers sort of in context, you know, this is about 1/4 of the UCP caucus that is publicly dissenting from the restrictions being put in place by their party leader, by their premier, Jason Kenney. And, you know, he said, we accept, you know, caucus members having their own views and stuff, but the NDP seizing on it, clearly he's in a bit of a tough spot trying to keep everyone on board.
You know, it's interesting. We spoke to Drew Barnes on Bridge City News as well, MLA for Cypress Medicine Hat, and he said, I'm here to represent my constituents, not necessarily to toe the party line. It's all about the constituents here and, you know, their concerns they really have. Now, there was apparently a spill of COVID-19 at the legislature with a small outbreak at the Premier's office. Tell me more.
Yeah, so there were sort of rumors circulating late last week about that, and then it sort of came out because someone asked the New Democrats about it, and the New Democrats then asked about it in question period, sort of saying, you know, why were we not given information about this? We haven't heard from contact tracers. The Premier's office didn't reach out to us or anything. And this sort of boiled over into quite a nasty Twitter spat on Tuesday, I think it would have been, when some of the people from the Premier's office saying, oh, the NDP is demanding the identities of these people who've fallen ill. The NDP saying, no, we just want to know whether or not perhaps some of our caucus members have come into contact with them. So it's been a little nasty down at the legislature of late, but that was just another example of, you know, a small issue maybe that really sort of seems to have exploded into the public sphere in a kind of an ugly way.
Tyler, the NDP's private members' bill on protecting the eastern slopes of the Canadian Rockies from coal mining has been allowed to proceed to the legislature for debate. And the committee, which decides that private members' bills should go forward, gave unanimous consent, most notably the 6 UCP members on this committee. Tell me more.
Yeah, so this bill is the one that the NDP brought in that would sort of put an end to the coal mining on the eastern slopes. Now, this obviously goes back some weeks, some months now, when the UCP said they were repealing the coal rules that had been in place since 1976. There was a big outcry. Small town mayors, country stars, Corb Lund, and others, Paul Brand, that's who it was. It slipped my mind there for a hot second. They spoke out against it. So big sort of drama within the UCP and within, you know, their constituencies on this. So the NDP has come back and brought this bill in, and what the bill would do is cancel all leases that were granted since the 1976 coal policy was repealed before it was put back in. And it would also make it more difficult for any company that wanted to coal mine in these areas, even if they weren't environmentally sensitive, they would need to come up with a whole land use plan and things like that. Now, the question, of course, is whether or not this is going to go anywhere. It's certainly coming to the legislature, but the UCP simultaneously is doing its own sort of study on what the coal regulations ought to be. So even though there was this unanimity, even though 6 UCP MLAs sort of said this could go forward, it's no doubt going to be an interesting debate because this is a big issue and clearly a bipartisan issue. But the UCP has this other thing going on. So whether or not this bill, makes it all that far, I think it strikes me as unlikely. Let's put it that way.
For those people who want to do some backcountry camping in our province this summer, hopefully we'll have great weather for it, they're going to have to come up with a few extra dollars. Now, the government announced that there'll be fees for random backcountry camping. So, Tyler, how much will the fees be and how much is the province hoping to generate?
The province is hoping to generate about $1.5 million in the first year, and that goes up to the range of 2.5 in the second year. The fees themselves are for people who are over the age of 18, so kids obviously don't need to pay, but it'll be $20 per adult for a 3-day pass, and then $30 per adult for an annual pass. So the best bang for your buck if you're going more than once, of course, is to get that annual pass. So that's the system they've put in place, or it will come into effect, I should say. What that money is going to be used for is infrastructure upgrades, maintenance, cleanup, conservation, all that kind of stuff that is of concern to the people that really enjoy these areas. The NDP, of course, seizing on this, making a bit of a political issue about it, saying that times are tough, Albertans are losing their jobs. Why is the UCP bringing in more fees for what's an otherwise affordable vacation and so on? So probably bound to happen. Not a huge outlay of cash, I wouldn't say, but a little bit of controversy down at the legislature about it, no doubt about that.
Now, speaking of controversy, it appears as though the province's new curriculum is causing a little bit of controversy and drama. Now, a number of school boards, including here in Lethbridge, say they don't want any part of the new draft curriculum in September.
Yeah, and I've been thinking about this a lot the last couple of weeks because it hadn't even occurred to me that a school board could say no to this sort of thing. So it just goes to show how much those local level politics matter. But that's the case. Yeah, a whole pile of them said they're not going to pilot it this year, saying that they've heard feedback from parents, from constituents who don't want this in the schools. The UCP as yet is standing by this curriculum. They're saying this is a draft curriculum. We're taking feedback on it. This September is a pilot. It's not finalized. But there's been lots of drama about it. And the big development this week probably is you had 4 Alberta First Nations come out against it, saying that this glosses over First Nations history. There are omissions. It's not, an appropriate curriculum in the context of reconciliation. So that's a pretty solid body blow for the UCP on this curriculum, I would say. But as yet, not backing down. They're standing by it.
Tyler, small to medium business owners in our province will be receiving some much needed help, more help from the province. That includes another grant of up to $10,000. There have also been some changes proposed to trades and apprenticeship programs.
This is all sort of what we've been talking about for a while here about, the UCP still doing, government things during the pandemic. So with the trades and apprenticeships stuff, it basically just overhauls an older system that's in place. It said it's supposed to reduce red tape, changes some of the apprenticeship stuff, removes it, I should say, from sort of the skilled trade stuff. So you could have apprenticeships for things that are not necessarily skilled trades. Probably makes a little more sense to people who are in the trades, unlike us white collar schlubs. So that's a change there. And as you say, restaurants, small businesses totally hurting right now with the latest round of sort of lockdown measures, public health restrictions. The government has put up some more cash to help these people weather it for the next few weeks, however long this is going to go for.
Yeah, so many small business owners, you're right, I've spoken to here in southwestern Alberta, and it's the mom and pop stores, the ones that have been in our community for 30, 40, 50 years. Those are the ones that I think have some of the best food, and these old menus, going back to their parents, their grandparents, and those are the ones who are really struggling, saying we need dine-in, so this curbside pickup and delivery is just not really working for us. Tyler, while the government previously announced it, the bill that would remove sections of the Public Health Act that in theory would allow for mandatory vaccinations, so Albertans will not be forced to get a COVID-19 vaccine shot?
No, and it's sort of an interesting thing because Dr. Dina Hinshaw, Health Minister Tyler Shandro, and the Premier all sort of have said over the course of this that they were not going to use it, that this was sort of a legacy piece of the legislation that had been in place for like decades and had never been used. Hinshaw said she couldn't imagine a scenario in which she could use it. But the UCP announced some time ago that they were going to be, overhauling some of these sections of the Public Health Act, and that's one of the things that they've promised to remove. It's certainly, whether justifiable or not, it is very much a concern in some quarters, so they're going ahead and they're going to remove that once those amendments are all finished.
I know some of the cases are rare, but as well, we've had in the news recently some of the rare blood clots. When it comes to the Oxford AstraZeneca vaccine and now the one-shot Johnson & Johnson vaccine, that's been that's been put on pause, and the rollout to Europe, that's been delayed as well. So, a lot of people, including here in Alberta, we have a lot of concerns about it. Now, Tyler, Tracy Allard, perhaps best known for going to Hawaii after Christmas, read a cancel culture poem in the legislature this week in the vein of Dr. Seuss. Do you have a little bit of that poem? Can you recite it for us?
You know what? I do. I'll pull it up on my phone here because, it just doesn't do it justice. So let me pick sort of the last little bit. I hope those after me will choose to be kind, will seek understanding instead of rewind. So, Mr. Speaker, to the world I implore, stop canceling culture and instead choose explore. That's how it goes. And then it continues near the end. Instead of requiring those who've gone before to understand our time, need I say more? Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So, of course, there's the Mr. Speaker references in there because the member is speaking to the speaker. A bit of a lighter moment. She's getting made fun of on social media for it, but a little bit of levity down at the legislature, I think, is maybe not the worst thing at this particular moment.
So, how well was it received from some of the other MLAs? What did they have to say about it?
Well, there's been a lot of sort of social media reaction, I would say, from people, but I haven't seen very much about the political reaction, I have to say. And I do wonder whether or not she wrote it, or whether or not, constituent wrote it, and I don't know the answers to that, but a cancel culture poem in the legislature, she'll have, that'll be in Hansard forever, Hal.
So how about, speaking of the legislature, how's the relationship going between Premier Jason Kenney and Rachel Notley? Any recent fireworks that we should know about?
There've been a lot of fireworks generally, I would say, between the two parties. Whether or not there's fireworks, I wouldn't say there's been any unique fireworks between Kenney and Notley. There was a little bit of maybe an olive branch, I would say, extended just the other day because Rachel Notley became eligible for her vaccination and got some kudos from Tyler Shandro, I believe. And also another Alberta personality recently, Stephen Harper, had his vaccine in the last week or so. He posted a photo of it on his social media. So
I'm wondering if Tyler Shandro actually administered the shot to Rachel Notley. Well, maybe not. Our legislative reporter and the Alberta correspondent for the National Post, Tyler Dawson, joining us once again from Edmonton. Thanks so much, Tyler.
My pleasure, Hal.
Is success overrated? Today's guest seems to think so, even though he's been incredibly successful. Richard Stearns is President Emeritus of World Vision US, a former corporate CEO at both Parker Brothers and Lennox, and the author of Lead Like It Matters to God. He joins me via Skype from Seattle, Washington. Richard, thank you so much for joining me today. It's great to have you on the show.
It's great to be here.
Okay, so first off, I don't think you're saying that success is a bad thing necessarily, right? But it shouldn't be our biggest focus.
Well, that's right. We live in a success-obsessed culture. We celebrate the wealthiest people, the winningest teams, the biggest churches, the fastest growing companies. And so we're all kind of marinating in this success-oriented culture that makes success the goal of our lives and our careers. And I like to say in my book that success is not a bad thing, but our goal as Christian leaders should be to be faithful. We want to be faithful leaders. We want to demonstrate with our character, the character of God, the character of Christ, to our coworkers and those around us. And so I make the statement, which is unusual for a leadership book, that success is overrated. I do believe that if you practice the values that I talk about in the book, that you probably will be more successful. But again, success is a byproduct, not the goal. God is not impressed by the title on our business card.
That's so true. So do you think that we're all called to be leaders in some fashion?
Well, I think yes, absolutely. One of the myths about leadership is that leaders are rare, and we celebrate and put certain leaders on pedestals, and we think, wow, they're the leaders and we're not. But most of us in life are leaders in some context and followers in another context. So you may have a day job where you don't have many leadership responsibilities, but you might be a leadership in your community. You might be coaching a soccer team. You might be a leader in your church. So all of us are leaders in some way or another, and that's why leadership is important.
Now, the name of your book is really interesting, Lead Like It Matters to God. So that sort of begs the question, what does matter to God when it comes to leadership?
Well, I think God is concerned about the character of a leader. How do we represent God as we go into our leadership positions? And how do we treat the people that are around us? They could be above us or below us in an organization, but the people kind of entrusted to our care, it's about how do we treat those people and how do we see them? Do we see them as people made in God's image that are worthy of our respect and our care? Or is our leadership, as it often is, sadly, all about ourselves, all about the leader getting ahead and being successful and just using people to get there, instead of looking at the people as my job as a leader is to help the people under me succeed and to bring out their God-given talents and gifts. And a successful leader is one that helps others realize their goals and their dreams and realize their God-given potential.
Interesting. You write that how we lead is actually, it matters more than the actual outcome. So why would that be?
I think sometimes we all imagine that day we might stand before God and give an accounting for our life. And I try to imagine that day, and I can't imagine God saying to me, Rich, we were just so impressed that you became a CEO when you were 33. You killed it. And when you were at Lennox Tableware, we were just so impressed for your 20 consecutive quarters of earnings growth. I don't think God is really impressed. It's not those things aren't important, but I don't think those are the things that impress God. God is much more concerned about how did we live our lives? How did we lead? How did we treat other people? How did we manage our money? How did we manage our families? And those are the things that will matter in the end. Sometimes I ask people, if you could write your own obituary, what would you want it to say? Would you want to say, I made all these real estate deals, or I started this company, I did this, or I made $1 million a year before I was 30. Probably if we wrote our own obituaries, we'd want them to talk about the people in whose lives we made a difference, the people we cared about and who cared about us. We'd want to talk about the human side of our lives and the relationships that mattered, not so much our achievements.
In your book, you write about 17 different character traits that are important for leadership. So you say that a couple of these are very important in today's climate, and that would be perseverance and vision. So can you elaborate on that?
Sure. I do write about these 17 leadership values. They're things like integrity and humility and encouragement and forgiveness and balance in our lives. But I think in this time of COVID, it's been a very challenging time for leaders. I'm actually glad to be retired right now and not leading World Vision because I don't envy my successor there. But I think perseverance and vision are related, and they're critical right now. People are disconnected. Many people are working from home, and they don't have the usual camaraderie and fellowship of working together in a setting with other people. And so you start to lose the vision. You start to lose your sense of purpose. Why are we here? What are we trying to accomplish? You don't even see the other members of the team except virtually. And so I think a leader needs to really maintain a compelling vision for the team that they're leading, reminding them constantly of what we're trying to do together and how we're going to accomplish it, and kind of a vision for a better future, because the present isn't all that great. And So the leader has to help the team see that light at the end of the tunnel and remember that, hey, we're going to get there and we're going to get there together. And then perseverance is the other side of that coin, that in the meantime, we all have to persevere. And when a leader shows that they can persevere, they encourage the people who work for them to believe that they can persevere as well. We'll get through this together. So I think those two qualities are particularly important right now.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Now, Richard, is there one thing about leadership that you wish that you had known about when you first began your career?
Yeah, there is. You know, I get asked that question a lot, and the benefit of age is wisdom. And you look back and you say, these are the things I wish I knew when I was 25 or 35 years old. And I think the one thing that I focus on is the power of encouragement. A leader who is an encourager of people, encouragement brings a huge return on investment, and it's actually free. But many leaders take an approach of criticism. So you look at a person who's doing a job, maybe they work for you, and you tend to focus on the negatives, right? What are they doing wrong, and what do I want them to do better? Instead of looking at that person and seeing all of their gifts and talents and affirming the things they're doing well. You know, I say in the book, imagine if you are a track runner, you know, in high school or college, and you're on the 4x4 relay team. And so you run a race at a track meet, and you kind of bungle the handoff a little bit, so you lose a second and your team loses the race. Now, what if you work for a coach who says, you know, you really messed up that handoff. If you don't fix that, we're never going to get to the state championship. You know, you just really screwed up today. Well, that's one coach. What about the other coach that says, that was one of the best relay legs I have ever seen you run. If you can just work on that handoff a little bit, we're going to win the state championship. Well, I want to run for the second coach because he's encouraged me. He said, look at what you did well. And you've just got this one thing to work on. And if you fix that, the sky is the limit. So encouraging people is something that, again, it's free and it makes a huge difference in the morale of the team that you're leading. And they will rise to that challenge if you just give them a little pat on the back from time to time. There's a place for criticism, but you don't lead with it.
I love that. So like you mentioned humility before. So when someone's in a leadership role, it naturally comes with a bit of attention and limelight, right? So what does a leader need to do to walk in humility?
Well, the first thing I say is leaders shouldn't believe their own press clippings, you know, because you read your own press clippings and your head gets big and you get full of yourself and you start to think it's all about you. And you know, Rick Warren, the pastor down here in California, in his book, The Purpose-Driven Life, he said this about humility. Humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's thinking of yourself less. So in other words, sometimes we think humility means that we're not gifted, or we're not proud of the strengths that we have as leaders. And that's not it at all. It's really about thinking less of yourself and more of others, more of the team, the greater good, and using those really great skills that you do have as a leader to lead your team and to accomplish things together. But, you know, a humble leader, nobody likes to work for an arrogant leader. An arrogant leader is a person who thinks, well, I have all the answers, so the rest of you are just chopped liver. I mean, why should I listen to your opinions because I have all the answers? I'm the smartest one on the team. Nobody wants to work for that person. But a humble leader says, we all have something to contribute, and your ideas may be better than mine, and I want to listen to what you have to say and what you have to contribute, and then we'll do it together. We'll make a good decision and we'll do things together. So humility's important.
Yeah, you have all these great things on your list, and integrity, of course, is on your leadership characteristic list. So practically speaking, what should that look like?
Well, I call integrity the North Star of leadership. If you don't have integrity, just go home, you know, and again, nobody wants to work for a leader who has no integrity. And so what does integrity mean? I talk about it in my book in two dimensions. There's relational integrity, right? The integrity you have in the relationships with your coworkers, and that means keeping short accounts and you know, forgiving people when they mess up and asking for forgiveness when you mess up. It means that you're a person of your word. You're a person who can be trusted. People trust you to make fair and just decisions in the workplace. And so when a leader has that kind of integrity, everybody on the team is relaxed because they trust the leader. They trust the leader to do the right thing. And they don't have to always be looking over their shoulder or worried about, I don't know if I can trust the leader with this or piece of information or that piece of information. But then there's another kind of integrity I call organizational integrity, where the leader sets the tone for a whole organization. What are the expectations for integrity on this team and in this organization? And you set expectations that I expect people to be truthful and honest and fair in all of their dealings, and not being a person of integrity is acceptable if you work on my team. And that gives clear boundaries and guidelines to the people that work for you, and it sets the tone for the whole organization so that you have an organizational culture characterized by that kind of integrity as well.
Mm-hmm. Did you compile this list by trial and error? Is that looking back on your career, are there things that you wish that you would have done differently? Was this wisdom developed over time?
Well, there's no question it was wisdom developed over time. Some of these things I learned the hard way. I made mistakes and didn't act the right way, and there were consequences to that. And so, hindsight is always 20/20. And my goal in writing the book was that hopefully it would be helpful for younger leaders who are early in their career or mid-career, and they're trying to be better leaders, and they're trying to be better ambassadors for Christ in their workplace, even if it's a secular workplace. And I think right now, Jeanette, we're living in a time when our values are kind of under assault. If you look at U.S. politics, I don't have to say anything more about values: integrity, humility, forgiveness, encouragement, generosity. We're not seeing that in many of our political leaders. But you look at corporate scandals, you look at the Me Too movement and all of the scandals that has revealed in almost every sector of our society. And then sadly, within the church, there have been scandals and difficult things. So right now, it seemed like a very timely moment to write a book about leadership values, that character matters, and that character is actually the main thing. Most of us would rather work for a leader who had a sterling character than a leader who had great competence but was a horrible person. And character goes a long way toward making a person a successful leader.
Yeah, no, that's true. You make a lot of sense. And you mentioned before about being ambassadors, right? And that can sometimes be challenging if you're working, especially in a secular company. So did you ever get admonished for being too religious, so to speak?
So I worked 23 years in very secular work environments, Parker Brothers and Lennox, and I made it a point to always have a big leather Bible on my desk, because I wanted people to know that I was a person of faith. I didn't want to shove it down their throat, but I wanted it symbolically people would know, because Rich has got a Bible on his desk. I never tried to proselytize or force my faith on people, but it was amazing how many times people had noticed that Bible, and of course they knew I went to church and I was involved in a youth group and my kids were in a Christian school, and when they were going through a hardship in their life, they would come in and shut the door and say, "Can I talk to you and get a little advice? And you seem like a person of faith and values." And so, our character in a workplace is really our witness. And there's a scripture in 2 Corinthians 5:20 that when I was at World Vision, I had it literally stenciled on my wall, painted on my wall, and it goes like this: "We are therefore Christ's ambassadors, as though God is making his appeal through us." So wherever you work, you could work at Amazon or Google or a TV station. God is making his appeal through you in that place where you work. And that's an amazing responsibility. That's actually our main job as followers of Christ, to be his ambassador. And we might do that in a secular workplace. We might do that in the government, in an educational institution, or we might do it in a Christian ministry. But if we think about ourselves as ambassadors, we'll behave differently in the workplace.
Yeah, and it's amazing the doors that it can open, like you just shared the example there. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Richard. It looks like we are about out of time, but thanks for writing such a great book on values-driven leadership. Appreciate having you on here.
It's great to be on your program, Jeanette. Have a great day.
You too. Richard Stearns is the author of Lead Like It Matters to God. I'm Jeanette Roche. On behalf of all of us here at Bridge City News, thanks for watching.